Welcome to the channel. My name is Matthias. Today we're going to talk about the Schism miniseries. Now, this particular story had a pretty big impact on the X-Men side of the Marvel Universe when it came out. Way back in 2011, where we have Wolverine and Cyclops parting ways. Cyclops remains the leader of Utopia, and we get the Extinction Squad. He is hell-bent on protecting Hope, while Wolverine goes back to Westchester and reopens Xavier's school. So the thing is that if you read the story and you've not read X-Force up until that moment, this whole conflict between Wolverine and Cyclops that we get in this miniseries doesn't make much sense, and it sort of comes out of nowhere. But this was really built up in that X-Force series that I mentioned, where Cyclops would send Wolverine on all these messed up Black Ops missions to protect Utopia, but never getting his hands dirty. And Wolverine really started to resent Cyclops over this. Like, Wolverine had killed so many people in that series that it started to get to him. That X-Force series was crazy violent. It got to the point that Wolverine sort of started questioning himself that he was just only a killing machine. And he started to view Cyclops becoming more and more militaristic, being more like Cable. So this story starts off with Wolverine and Cyclops. They're going to the United Nations. Scott Summers is going to address the General Assembly because, sort of like Krakoa, Utopia was a nation state. Sort of. It was not as well developed as Krakoa. When out of nowhere, a psionic attack hits everyone in the General Assembly. Everyone starts blurting out loud their deepest, darkest secrets. And the dialogues that we get here are freaking hilarious. And the things that they say go on a spectrum from freaking hilarious to humiliating to very, very disturbing. And we discover that the one behind this attack is Kid Omega. But it's pretty funny because Kid Omega just does this super boneheaded move as a super fuck you to the world. But the thing is that he had nothing else planned for this. But what happens is all the world leaders totally freak out over what happened. And this leads to every single country in the world pretty much reactivating their Sentinel programs. Even the United Nations had its own group of Sentinels waiting for any type of contingency. So now we have Cyclops and Wolverine having to fight their way out. Mutants have been declared public enemies across the world, again thanks to Kid Omega. Later on in the story, we're going to discover that Quentin Quire was actually coaxed into this whole situation by Cade Kilgore, who is a new character introduced in the story. He's a young kid that's super, super evil, extremely ambitious. He finds 3 other kids just like him, and they make a move to take over the Hellfire Club, which they are able to do. And we discover also that Cade Kilgore is the one behind the return of all these Sentinels. So now we have the X-Men fighting Sentinels all across the world. Many of these old robots are malfunctioning and going haywire and attacking anything and everything. Cade Kilgore made sure this would happen so everyone would buy his new Sentinels. So basically the X-Men would destroy this older generation. It is actually pretty interesting to see how Cade is able to play the X-Men, get them to help his own agenda. And they have no idea that Cade Kilgore exists yet. Now, while all this is going down, what happens is the X-Men go to the inauguration of this new Mutant History Museum. Because during this time, at least in San Francisco, everyone loved them. They were the protectors of the city. When Cade and the other Hellfire kids attack, and they start wrecking the X-Men, they really catch them off guard. They don't know how to deal with the fact that they're fighting against kids. Very heavily armed kids, but kids. And now here we're going to touch on the main theme of the story outside of this. Now, during this time, Wolverine was really not okay with Cyclops sending younger mutants on missions. During this time, you had Generation Hope, who were like the new mutants of this time. One of the members of the team was a very young girl. Her name was Idie or Idie. And Logan really took her under his wing and really wanted to make sure that she had a normal life for a kid. Now she's trapped in this museum while the Hellfire kids are attacking. And she ends up actually killing a couple of Hellfire's foot soldiers. And Wolverine starts getting really pissed off with Cyclops because instead of getting her out of the situation, he actually made her stay and fight against the Hellfire soldiers. So things go from bad to worse, and what happens is, after this attack on the museum, this gigantic sentinel just forms out of nowhere, and it heads straight to Utopia to destroy it. So, as I mentioned earlier, all the X-Men are dispersed all across the globe fighting against Sentinels. The rest of the X-Men were incapacitated by the Hellfire kids. So the only people that we have left to defend Utopia are Cyclops, Wolverine, and Generation. And Wolverine tells Cyclops, get these kids off the island, you have to protect them, they're not soldiers. And Cyclops is like, yeah, I know they're kids, but this is our home, they have to defend it. Now, before I go on, I forgot to mention that Quentin Quire actually sought refuge on Utopia. He realized that he totally messed up and that someone tricked him to start this whole debacle in the first place. So let's get back to this final confrontation. So Wolverine just totally loses it with Cyclops. So Wolverine tells Scott, look, I have this whole island wired with explosives. Get all the kids out of here and we can make a trap for the Sentinel. And Cyclops is like, no freaking way. You're not going to touch Utopia. The kids do make a run for it initially. So we get this really epic battle between Wolverine and Cyclops. It is freaking brutal. And what happens is, obviously, this giant Sentinel arrives. It starts wrecking the place. And what happens is, the kids from Generation Hope, plus some of the New Mutants from the early 2000s, are able to stop the Sentinel. Wolverine and Cyclops obviously stop trying to kill each other. And now, with everything said and done, what happens is Wolverine decides to leave Utopia. He does not want to live this life anymore, and he does not want this life for the kids on Utopia either. They should be studying and learning how to use their powers, not be young soldiers. So this will set the stage for one of my all-time favorite X-Men runs, Wolverine and the X-Men. So I'm going to leave this video here. I hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time. Bye.